It's story time still. Today I'm going to tell you the story about why I regret taking my prenatal vitamin, and I took the same one with my last two kids. Even I felt like I knew better, and I didn't know this. And so this is about folate, folic acid, methylated folate, the MTHFR gene mutation, and why folic acid isn't probably as good as you think it is. So this is frustrating to me because by the time I was pregnant, even with my third child, I didn't realize that different forms of vitamins had such a different impact in your body. And so one of the big ones is folic acid. And so people that are susceptible to things like autism, they think the MTHFR gene mutation might be the autism gene. So we did have autism in our family. We're just a little bit more sensitive, like food allergies and all of that is all signs you might have that gene mutation. Even if you don't, they've done some studies in mice or rats that given a bunch of folic acid, which is a synthetic version of natural folate, they develop that gene mutation. They develop the inability to process that. And so the reason that folic acid, if you can't process it, is so bad is because everyone knows how important folic acid is. This is something that was like drilled into my head in the 90s, even in just like health class, is folic acid is essential for preventing spina bifida. And that's why like our foods are fortified with it. And all of that is in an effort to get the spina bifida and neural tube defects, which is a midline defect, to be reduced. And so for people that don't absorb folic acid well, which I'm assuming I absorbed some of it, like my kids they didn't have spina bifida, but they do have midline defects. And this is something that I feel so bad about now as a mom. And I'm hoping that by saying this, you can prevent this from happening. This is one of the few things I try not to give my opinion unless I'm asked, but I will ask any woman that I know that has become pregnant, what kind of folate or what kind of prenatal are you taking, and does it have natural folate or methylated folate and not folic acid? So the problem with taking folic acid is that it competes for the receptor site. So we need that folic acid, which is a B vitamin, to build a healthy baby, to build really anything. So for even if you're not pregnant and you're taking folic acid, you might feel a little bit more tired than if you were taking a folate. The B vitamins are energy vitamins. I mean, they do a lot more than that, but they are giving us lots of good energy. So if you feel like you're a little bit low energy, check your Bs. And so folic acid is a synthetic version. It's cheap, it's shelf stable, and it's what they put in all fortified foods. And so this is something, and it was in my prenatal, and I got like what was supposedly a food-based prenatal. It had added folic acid in it. And so if you're wondering which one I recommend Seeking Health brand, and I will link to it down below. But we'll talk more about that in a minute. But if you are, if you have folic acid in your system and you're not someone that can absorb it, like you don't make the enzyme needed to turn it into actually what your body can use, then it's just sitting there in your blood and going through, which is why there's been some studies that say that moms of kids with autism have more what they call folate in their blood. They have more folic acid in their blood because your body's not using it. It's not able to use it, so it's just like chilling until it can process it out like a toxin. And so for those of us that can't use it well, yeah, that does make sense that we would have more of it in our blood, but it's not doing what it needs to be doing, which is getting into cells and helping prevent midline defects or neural tube defects in our children. So sometimes we have just less of that enzyme that processes it. And that's probably why my kids don't have spina bifida. But some people don't have hardly any of that enzyme or any of that enzyme, and it's just in there causing problems. And so even if we were eating folate, which is in a lot of like leafy greens, it's in liver, it's in your healthy meats. So even if you're eating natural folate, because you have that folic acid circulating in your blood system, your receptor sites are bound with the bad stuff that your body's not processing. And so the good stuff can't even get in. And so that's why it's so important to avoid folic acid if you're one of these people that can't process it. And you can get a blood test to test for this gene mutation. In general, just what I know about it, especially since they have done those studies that say that even people without the gene mutation, eventually given enough folic acid, will stop being able to process it. And because most of us that are at childbearing age right now were born in a time that they did fortify food with folic acid, we've probably had our max amount. So if you're pregnant, avoiding folic acid can be a really essential part to having a healthy baby. And so what I found, and this is kind of when my gears started turning about this, is my first 2 kids, I didn't have much nutrition knowledge, and I'd been told by the doctors and stuff that if you eat enough calories, like everything's fortified enough, especially if you eat lots of cereal and non-fat milk was super recommended to me when I was pregnant with my first couple kids. Then your body will just pull what they need either from your own body or from the foods that you eat, and you'll be fine. And then my third one, I knew better. I knew how important a nutrient-dense diet was. I had practiced doing it. And so he came out, and as I was sitting on the couch, kind of like in La La Land after giving birth, his latch was hard and his tongue was tied, and like he'd stick out his tongue and it was heart-shaped, which is a sign of a tongue tie. I'm like, how can he be tongue-tied? Like, my diet was pretty good, not only with him, but for like the 5 years prior to his birth. And I took what I thought was a good prenatal and all of that. And then my friend Teresa told me, she was telling me about, she has a lot of kids that are, she's adopted out of the foster system, and a lot of these kids come with lots of different problems. And she's telling me about how switching their vitamins and taking folic acid out of their diet and switching to methylated folate is something that really benefited from them. And I just kind of like, I know how important folate, not folic acid, is to preventing midline defects like neural tube defects like spina bifida, which is where the spine doesn't close over the spinal cord. And so I know how important folate is to preventing neural tube defects. And so it made sense to me that like any midline defect, which would be tongue tie, could come from having the wrong form of folate. And so that is why I super regret taking I probably wasn't even getting hardly any folic acid in my diet because we ate mostly gluten-free, and usually the fortified foods are foods that have gluten in them. But I took that prenatal with the high dose of folic acid because I still thought at 29 that it was super important to grow a healthy baby. And so now I just stick with Seeking Health. I trust them. Ben Lynch, he's an awesome guy, but he has done a lot of research in the gene mutation. He's done a lot of research with the B vitamins. And so not only B vitamins, I mean, this could be more than B vitamins. It's just B is what I've looked into, are so important. And he's just like, he puts tons and tons of effort, and he just seems like a really stand-up guy, lots of integrity, that he's not putting anything into these vitamins that we're not absorbing. And so like, that's why pretty much every vitamin out there, if you're taking a multivitamin or your kids are taking a multivitamin, almost all of them use the cheaper form of folate, which is folic acid, and we're not absorbing it. And so that's where a lot of people say, well, it says 100% folic acid. It says like our RDA has been 100%. And that's where you really have to get into doing your research, especially before taking supplements or giving supplements to your kids, is that just because it says it fills the government's needs, the government might not necessarily be looking into what our body actually needs. And that's what can be so scary and frustrating as a parent. That's why I choose Seeking Health. I don't have time to look up every single vitamin that we use. We do use these as our multivitamins. I'd be comfortable taking these during pregnancy instead of a prenatal. I'm sure he probably has a prenatal. I just learned about this after I wasn't breastfeeding anymore. I don't take as much as he recommends. Our diet is very nutrient dense, but I feel like because we've had the years and years of probably being deficient, and for whatever reason our the food isn't usually as vitamin rich as our bodies need. I do supplement a multivitamin for my kids. I just do usually every other day. For the kids is I give them one vitamin every other day instead of, I think it says 2 a day is what's recommended. And so we do less, but it's something when I started the Natural Bees, when I started these, the good form of folate, is I noticed a huge uptick in energy. And that's something that can be a sign that you were deficient. A lot of times if you're deficient in something, you're going to get an uptick in energy, and especially with the B vitamins. And then it might mellow out a little bit. That doesn't mean you need more Bs. That means that you've just corrected a deficiency. So it's like if you're super thirsty and drink water, like your water feels so good going into your body. But if you keep drinking water, even if you're just like remaining adequately hydrated, it never tastes as good as that water when you're like dying of thirst. And so that's why you might get like the initial energy boost, the initial like mental clarity, taking those correct form of B vitamins, and then it slows down after a while as you just corrected a deficiency. So if you'd like to check it out, I will link down below. I encourage you to pay attention to this better than I did. So I hope you can learn from my mistakes. We'll talk again soon. Thanks for joining me.